The Separatist Council was one of the most powerful components of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, responsible for overseeing funding for the Separatist war effort. It was a small group, consisting of about a dozen corporate leaders and wealthy senators, plus their lackeys, and for most of its existence, it kept to the shadows. To an outside observer, it would seem that the council didn't actually do much in the Clone Wars, aside from a few vanity campaigns here and there. But this is a misconception. The Separatist Council was quite busy during the Clone Wars, and in this video, we'll be taking a look at the terrible things they got up to.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Formally, the Separatist Council was led by Count Dooku and General Grievous, the Confederacy's head of state and supreme commander respectively, though we won't be talking about them much today. The other members of the council represented powerful separatist business and political interests. The Trade Federation, the most powerful council faction, was represented by Viceroy Newt Gunray, with Settlement Officer Rune Hako and Arutius Gunay serving as aides. The Techno Union was represented by Foreman Wat Tambor. The Intergalactic Banking Clan was represented by San Hill, and the Geonosian Industries were represented by Poggle the Lesser. Shu Mei and her aide Kat Min represented the Commerce Guild, while Magistrate Pascal Argente and Denaria Key represented the Corporate Alliance. Three powerful senators were present on the council as well: Senator Po Nudo of Ando, Senator Teeks of Moncala, and Senator Rogwa Wadrata of Aliga. All of them had their own interests during the Clone Wars, and most of them pursued them. Now, very little is known about Rogwa Wadrata and whether or not she did anything, but unfortunately for the galaxy, the same can't be said for our other senators on the council. Senator Po Nudo of Ando took over the hyper communications cartel of the IGBC, which he used to hijack holonet transmitters and eavesdrop on Republic communications. The HCC was responsible for the CIS shadow feed and other separatist propaganda broadcasts, as well as for Skytop Station and other separatist listening posts. He also riled up his people in support of the Spivarelda, Ando's brutal government, which was engaged in a genocidal war against the Loyalist and Doan free colonies. Senator Tikez attempted to bring Mon Cala into the Confederacy, but when the Mon Calamari chose instead to ally with the Republic, he formed the Quarren Isolation League, which he used to incite the Quarren against their planetary neighbours. The result was two massive battles on Mon Cala, both of which saw the Quarren attempt to utterly subjugate the Mon Calamari, something they had been wanting to do for millennia in revenge for past grievances. The Quarren Isolation League was, of course, defeated, and Tikez instead focused on building up the Free DAC Volunteer Engineering Corps, which worked with Pamant Docks and the shipyards on Mintoween to build warships for the Confederacy, including the Malevolence. Both Po Nudo and Tikez were responsible for quite a bit of death and destruction. Nudo's efforts made the Andoan theatre of the Clone Wars even bloodier than they were already bound to be, as the supporters of the Spivarelda were radicalized by his propaganda and attempted to commit genocide against the free colonies. And while Tikez's Quarren Isolation League was defeated in two successive battles on Mon Cala, it made relations between the Quarren and Mon Calamari much worse. Because of Tikez's radicalization of the Quarren populace, after the war's end, Quarren saboteurs disabled Mon Cala's planetary shield and let the Empire in when the Mon Calamari tried to resist, leading to the enslavement of the entire planet. Poggle the Lesser's bid to reclaim Geonosis is well known, but the other things he and the Geonosians did during the Clone Wars aren't. During the war, Poggle took over Geonosian assets across the galaxy and put them all to work building droids for the Confederacy. Poggle and his lackeys went around to worlds they deemed suitable and converted parts of them into droid factories, often building small hives in the process. This typically involved the enslavement of local populations, as the Geonosians often needed the manpower for their factories. This was the fate the Geonosians subjected Gentes, Zadja, and Utapau to, a fate that in some cases involved the destruction of entire cities. But the mega corporations ended up doing far more abominable things than the politicians. The Trade Federation, Commerce Guild, Techno Union, IGBC, and Corporate Alliance were all notorious for buying entire planets and then treating them terribly. Without Republic regulations holding them back, all 5 of these corporations turned the brutal exploitation up to 11, stripping entire planets in the name of the Separatist war machine. Newt Gunray, Sandhill, Wat Tambor, Shu Mei and Pascal Argenter may have spent most of the war far from the battle lines, but they ended up doing more damage than entire droid armies. Often, councillors proved to be every bit as ruthless as General Grievous when they are at the helm of planetary invasions. During an assault on the agricultural planet Yukio, Pascal Argenter of the Corporate Alliance had vast quantities of dirt dumped on Yukio's planetary shield, blocking out the sun and threatening to kill virtually every living thing on the planet in the process if the Yukians didn't lower the shield. In this case, the Corporate Alliance wasn't just okay with killing everything on Yukio, but starving out the thousands of worlds that depended on food imports from Yukio as well. But if that wasn't brutal enough, when the Yukians did lower the shield, the Corporate Alliance deployed weapons that issued frequencies capable of sending sentients into blood rages, undoubtedly killing vast numbers of civilians in the process. The Techno Union topped that, however. We're likely all quite familiar with what Wat Tambor did to Ryloth, but he and his subordinates did something far worse to the planet Nelvan. The Nelvanians were a fairly primitive warrior species, and the Techno Union took advantage of their primitivism by luring them into a facility and turning them into slave soldiers. The Nelvanian warriors were mutated beyond recognition and then converted into cyborgs through incredibly invasive procedures. They were essentially enslaved by these cybernetic enhancements, and the Techno Union planned to ship the Nelvanians off to the front lines to replace droid units. Anakin Skywalker ultimately destroyed the facility and murdered its lead scientists, but even when the Nelvanians had their cybernetic implants removed, they remained horribly mutated and there was nothing that could be done about it. Sandhill and the Intergalactic Banking Clan played both sides of the Clone Wars, and though they were generally aligned more with the CIS, they did business with the Republic as well. While this might have seemed like a nice gesture on their part, there was a rather insidious downside to it. Because the IGBC was working with the Republic allowed them to retain control of the banks, and thus Sandhill had a massive amount of influence over the Republic's budget. The IGBC used this to further hurt the Republic's economy, often forcing the Senate to choose between funding the war and helping the civilian population. The civilians of the galaxy suffered greatly for it. In a similar vein, the Trade Federation weaponized its control of shipping during the war, blockading planets for strategic regions and denying supplies to crucial Republic worlds. They attempted to starve Republic sectors into joining the Confederacy, deliberately making the humanitarian crisis caused by the Clone Wars worse for strategic gain. What's worse, Newt Gunray was known to use supply routes to blackmail planets for personal reasons, as he displayed when he promised aid in response for cooperation in a bid to force Rhodia into giving him Padme Amidala. But even Newt Gunray was outdone by some of his contemporaries. Shu Mei of the Commerce Guild was by far the worst of the Separatist councillors. Under her supervision, the Commerce Guild bought up entire planets, all but enslaved their civilian population and forced them to devastate their own homeworlds, strip mining them for the Guild's war effort. Castell, her own homeworld, was one of the planets she subjected to this treatment. Throughout the Clone Wars, Shu Mei was responsible for incredible amounts of devastation, as Commerce Guild forces were absolutely merciless in how they treated planets under their control, regardless of whether they had been conquered or joined the Confederacy willingly. Mei once infamously claimed that the concept of morality, quote, encumbered and slowed the appropriate development of a truly advanced society, and she apparently made it her mission during the Clone Wars to prove it. Commerce Guild forces frequently won battles with scorched earth tactics, as exemplified by the Battle of Kyria, in which a large part of the Kyrian population was murdered by Separatist forces. But in the end, Shu Mei did get what she deserved. On Mustafar, she was murdered by Darth Vader and his terrible puns. By and large, the Separatist Council was ultimately given its due by the Empire. The whole group was slaughtered by Darth Vader on Mustafar, after which the Empire nationalized the companies it represented and liquidated them. Only the Intergalactic Banking Clan was allowed to continue existing, and even then, its power was considerably reduced. So that's the truth about the Separatist Council and the terrible things it did. But what do you think? Would you guys like to hear more about any of these guys? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, make sure you check out some of the links in our description below, including our Relax Jack music channel, where you can find the music played in this video and in a lot of our previous videos as well. And if you want access to some of the exclusive thumbnails we custom make on this channel, please do check out our Patreon. And if you just want to join the wider Geetsly's community, we do have our Discord server there and our Geetsly's gaming network if you want to play some Gary's mod with the boys. So all those links are in the description below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.